Russian President Vladimir Putin has warned his forces will use cluster bombs if Ukraine uses similar munitions in the war. The Kremlin claims it has a sufficient stockpile and will deploy them if necessary.
When Vladimir Putin does an interview on state-run media, he knows his thoughts and pronouncements will go unchallenged, which may be why he told a TV reporter that the Russian army hasn't used cluster munitions in Ukraine.
In the Russian Federation, we have enough reserves of different types of cluster bombs. Different types, but we haven't used them so far. We haven't had the need to do this, even though we had a shortage of ammunition.
The Russian president knows these weapons are controversial, and he seemed to take a principled view before threatening to use them on the Ukrainians if they strike first.
We've never used them, but of course, if they use them against us, we have every right to mirror their actions.
There's a problem with Putin's viewpoint. The Russians have been using cluster munitions since the beginning of the war, like Kharkiv, the country's second largest city. Civil rights group Human Rights Watch says the Russians dropped cluster bomblets on at least 3 residential districts at the beginning of the war. Then there's Kramatorsk, where 2 missiles fitted with cluster bombs were dropped on and near the railway station. 63 people were killed. Russia said the Ukrainians fired on themselves.
Russia was using all types of weapons they have. Every type of weapon Russia has, they have already used. They use thermobaric weapons, phosphorus bombs, cluster munition. So everything except for the tactical nuclear weapons, which Russia uses as a bargain chip. What retaliation could they do? They have already did the most awful and terrible things they can.
Putin may be stirring the pot after US President Joe Biden agreed to supply cluster bombs to the Ukrainians. Biden said they were running out of ammunition. That decision caused much discomfort. The UK and many other countries have signed a treaty banning their use. Cluster weapons kill indiscriminately, and unexploded bomblets can linger for years. There's another way to understand this, however. It's all about public opinion. Putin is trying to court it at home when he says that Russia is trying to defend itself. But the viewpoint here in Ukraine is different. Most people support the use of cluster weapons if it drives the Russians out. The Russian leader was also sounding bullish about the war. He pronounced the Ukrainian counteroffensive a failure, in the knowledge that no one was likely to object. John Sparks, Sky News in eastern Ukraine.